Sirens smeared a dark like knives. The parking structure hums with echoing drips and a ringing phone. No one wants to answer. The narrator watches Detective Marcus Hale step under the sick light and steady his breath. Priya, Shah said, "You smell that?" Bleach and fear. The concrete floor shows a skid, a struggle, a stop. On the wall, a broken circle is painted in blood. Inside it, one word looks freshly written. Marcus said someone wanted this scene. The phone on the hood of a sedan won't quit. He hates that sound, yet he needs it. He reaches, but the word on the wall pins him still. Repay. Cold air pushes through his coat and lifts paper like small ghosts. Priya said, "If we answer, we play by his rules." The ring cuts, then returns with a higher pitch, like a dare. Marcus said, "Rules or not, people are dead." He answers. A flat voice breathes, "First debt paid." Static scrapes the ear. Then a second voice behind the first whispers a name he knows. The line dies before he can ask how the killer knows his brother. The call replays in Marcus's head as he walks the ramp, each footfall keeping time with the words "first debt paid." The narrator notes how he hates echoes when a case is fresh. Priya said, "He knows our scene tempo. He timed that ring to your step." The security guard shakes but points to the camera feed room. Marcus wants the feed, the plates, the entry log, the exit blur. He also wants to forget the second voice that spoke a private name. Priya said, "We two-step this. I pull footage. You work the pattern." The broken circle burns behind his eyes like a brand. He thinks about a closed rehab and a file locked in a bottom drawer. He thinks about a promise he once made. The ramp air tastes metallic, like a coin on the tongue. Somewhere below, a door slams too hard for chance. He starts toward the sound and the lights flicker as if someone touched the switch before him. Is the watcher already moving to the next turn? Priya scrolls the feed, and the monitors breathe a soft static. The narrator notes the quiet click of keys, the small sounds that cases ride on. Marcus said, "Rewind to 2 hours before discovery." Frames stutter. A white cargo van slips past camera 3 with lights off. The guard said, "That camera glitches." Priya said, "Glitch is code for someone paid attention." She isolates a plate reflection on wet concrete and tags the time. Marcus feels the word repay settle like a weight across the ribs. He wants motive mapped to roots and roots mapped to names. He wants the voice. The guard swallows and asks if he should call it in as a threat. Priya said, "We call it a pattern." In the bottom right monitor, a silhouette pauses to look up at the lens. It never reveals a face. The screen tears, then clears. Why does the shadow stand there like it knows who is watching? Evidence techs arrive with rolling cases, and the structure gains a heartbeat of zippers and soft radios. The narrator follows Marcus as he marks distances from the wall to the sedan, from the sedan to the stairwell, counting like a habit that calms rain. Priya said, "No footprints past the bleach." Careful choreography. Marcus said, "He cleaned where he wanted us to look." The tech lifts a fiber with a whisper of tape. A key fob blinks once, weak and final. Marcus' phone vibrates with an unknown text. It is a single line from a dead number. Debt 1 equals silence broken. He pockets the screen and says nothing. Priya watches him and says everything with a look. The light steady, then dim again, as if the building cannot decide its mood. A faint hum rises from the stairwell throat. Will the stairwell give up a voice, or only more echoes? Down in the lowest level, breath hangs and paint peels. The narrator walks beside Marcus as he studies the drain lines and the oil-slick rainbow at the edge of a puddle. Priya said if he staged the word, he staged the sound. A far-off ringtone plays a second melody, thin and mocking. Marcus follows it to a trash bin, lined with fresh bags. Inside, a box of latex gloves, an empty bleach bottle, and a token from a closed rehab sit like props. He lifts the token with tweezers. The stamped initials match an old complaint he once filed. Priya said, "Someone wants us to chase history." The phone in the bin stops, then restarts with a new tone, like a metronome set to hurry. Marcus feels the case lock into him. He hears his own promise return. The air tastes like metal again. What promise did the killer hear? And when did he decide to answer it? The garage gate snaps up and cold air slams through like a warning. Footsteps scatter on the upper ramps as a radio barks for backup. The narrator feels the case grab Marcus by the spine. Priya said, "Van just hit street level. East exit. Tires shriek." A white blur cuts past the booth and scrapes a pillar, leaving paint. Marcus wants pursuit, but his hands shake with a pulse he can't quiet. Priya said, "You're running hot. Breathe." He hears the caller's words in the ring of metal and glass. First debt paid. He hates how it sounds like a promise kept. The guard said, "Should I lock the west gate?" Priya said, "Do it." Marcus said, "No, he wants lanes. We choke him at the river." A siren blooms outside. The dash cam pings a plate fragment. It matches nothing clean. What kind of ghost drives a van that the city refuses to see? The squad room is a box of humming lights and coffee steam. The narrator sees Marcus bend over a city map, shoulders tight. Priya said, "We got 90 seconds of riverfront cam before static." He watches the path like it's a scar. Exhaustion presses behind his eyes. He hates how memory edits facts into pain. Priya said, "Eat something." He shakes his head. She drops a protein bar by his hand anyway. The footage shows a white van glide past a shuttered pier. Lights off, brake flash brief as a wink. A sticker is torn on the rear door, a circle missing its top. Priya said, "He brands even when he hides." The room quiets as the heat clicks off. It is a small mercy. The map shows a lane that the van could take to a dead lot. Marcus traces it. If the lot is dead, why does the road feel warm? They reach the dead lot and find life waiting. A cheap tripod stands in the center, lens aimed at a chalk X. The narrator feels control in the stillness. Marcus said, "He staged a classroom." Priya said, "He wants an audience." A speaker clicks on with a soft pop. Ethan Ward said, "Det 2 requires attention." His voice is steady like a medic counting breaths. A video plays on the screen of a burned phone taped to the rig. A donor smiles with a judge on a ribbon day. Ethan said, "They refused intake. She died waiting." The chalk X points to a drain where bleach has pooled. Priya steps back. Marcus steps closer. He hears calm, and calm is worse than rage. The speaker buzzes once more. Ethan said, "You follow patterns. I make them. The rig powers off by itself." It is the lesson that he always writes the test before they arrive. They sit in the car by the pier, heater low, world hushed. The narrator lets time slow while the river breathes fog. Priya said, "You keep chasing your brother's echo." He stares at the wheel. He hates how true it is. She said, "Grief can steer. Don't let it drive." He remembers the complaint he filed and the door that never opened. Priya said, "We need smarter anger. We need a map he doesn't expect." Her tone is soft, then firm. She shows a pattern of donor addresses arcing toward a rehab shell company. It loops back to a fixer they never charged. The page shakes just once in her hand, a tiny quake she hides. Marcus said, "You afraid?" She said, "Every day. But fear can teach." Fog horns call out like slow metronomes. If fear is the teacher, what lesson costs the least blood? Movement returns like a drum line. The narrator feels the engine kick and the map fold. Marcus said, "We flip his lanes. We go to the fixer first." Priya nods, jaw tight. She pings plates near the shell company and flags the storage lease paid in cash. A name repeats across receipts like a watermark. Noah Briggs. Marcus said, "He's been feeding us crumbs," Priya said, "or someone's feeding him." The car rolls past warehouses where gulls cry like sirens. He hates how hope can sound like warning. The storage gate is up, just enough to invite. They step under and smell bleach hiding in cold air. Priya said, "We suit up." He pulls on gloves and thinks of the first word on the wall. Repay. He chooses not to whisper it. A camera light blinks once inside the unit. Do they enter the frame or make a new one outside his plan? Inside the unit, calm waits like a trap wrapped in neat labels. The narrator hears only the click of a timer somewhere above. Boxes line the walls in perfect columns. Noah Briggs said, "You came fast." He steps from a shadow with hands up. His smile is thin. Priya said, "You rented this." He shrugs. Marcus studies his eyes and sees the tremor he heard in the car. Noah said, "He said you'd need a map. I kept what he sent." He points to a crate marked with a broken circle. "It is too neat. It is too ready." Marcus said, "Why help now?" Noah looks at the floor and misses the question. The timer's click grows into a soft metronome. Calm can be camouflage. Why does the room feel arranged to make trust the easiest choice? They open a crate and find files sealed in plastic. The narrator watches relief try to land and fail. Priya said, "Chain of custody will be a war." Marcus said, "We log now and argue later." Noah said, "He wanted this scene." He rubs his wrist as if recalling a grip. The files show donor emails, intake refusals, and a roster with 3 names blacked out. Priya said, "He's redacting his sins." Noah's smile fades. He said, "He lost someone too." Marcus hears a softness he does not like. Trust creeps in on the edges, easy and warm. A note falls from a sleeve. It says, "Debt 2 equals voice restored." The timer stops. Silence hits like a wall. Why does silence feel like a fuse waiting for the spark they have not seen? A projector hums and throws a face onto the corrugated wall. The narrator feels control return to the unseen hand. Ethan Ward said, "You measure, I weigh." His eyes never blink on the recording. He speaks like a clock that learned anger, Marcus said. "He's not hiding rage. He's curating it," Priya said. "He thinks he's a doctor with a cure." Ethan lists names and dates, never raising his voice. Each word lands like a stamp. He holds up the same token Marcus found in the bin. He said, "This pays for what they save for themselves." The screen cuts to black. A single line remains. "You will trade silence for breath." The unit light flickers once. What breath must be traded, and by whom, before the door shuts on choice? The betrayal arrives quiet. The narrator sees Noah step behind Priya with a small remote. He whispers, "I'm sorry," and presses. Locks slam inside the unit door. A vent roars and bleach sting bites the air. Priya coughs hard. Marcus said, "Noah." The word cracks. Noah said, "He said this buys me out." His hands shake, but he does not stop. The projector blinks back on with the timer counting down. 15. Priya fumbles for the latch and finds smooth metal welded shut. Marcus hits the hinge with a light, then a crowbar. 10. Noah said, "He promised no one dies if I seal you in." 7. Priya said, "Look at me." Noah looks and breaks. He kills the fan. 4. Silence rushes in. A hidden latch pops under Marcus' bar with a scream of metal. 2. What kind of rescue leaves a bruise you cannot hide? After, The unit breathes like a lung that forgot its rhythm. The narrator watches Noah sit on the threshold with his head in his hands. Priya said, "He used you." Her voice is flat. Marcus said, "He used all of us." The remote lies in dust like a dead insect. Noah said, "He said my name like he knew me." Shame folds him small. Marcus feels a truth cut open. Ethan did not guess their steps. He made them. Priya said, "He wants the next door to be his, not ours." The files still sit on the table, clean and cruel. Wind rattles the row and carries a smell of river water. Marcus pockets the note about voice restored. He chooses not to comfort Noah. He chooses a path instead. If the next door is his, where do they stand when it closes? Silence lays over the storage row like dust after a fall. The corridor hums, then settles, and wind threads thin through the gaps. The narrator watches Marcus steady his breath and count it back to even. Priya said, "We're alive." Her voice sounds smaller than the metal around them. Noah stares at his palms as if truth stained them. Marcus feels the timers click still echo, each one a missed warning. He hates that he wanted to trust. He wanted a door that opened easily. He reads the note again and hears the call again. First debt paid. He looks at the crate seals. None are broken that were not meant to be. Priya said he curated every path. The river's smell rides the wind and turns sharp like memory after rain. The projector's casing is warm. Inside the battery bay, a second note waits, who hides a map in the heat that fear leaves behind. The note is an address and a date, 3 years past. The narrator follows Marcus through the file in his mind to a night he tried to forget. A waiting room with a flicker, a clerk who closed a window at midnight, a hallway that smelled of bleach and winter coats. Marcus said, "They refused intake." The memory answers with the same words. Priya said, "Walk me through it." He does. The seat he held. The token he kept. The call he made that no one took. He hears a monitor somewhere in the present and a monitor in the past, both slow and cruel. A ribbon-cutting photo from the crate overlays the memory like a stain. Priya said, "The donors wrote the rules." He nods once. The date on the note matches the night he filed the complaint. Who else knew his schedule well enough to place that key in his pocket? They meet in the empty lobby as night leans in. The narrator counts the beats between words. The doors creak like old lungs. Ethan Ward's voice arrives by speaker from behind the desk, recorded yet close. Ethan said, "You chased a ghost. I chased a clock." Marcus said nothing. His jaw works like a held vow. Priya said, "You killed to teach." Air thins. The speaker crackles and slows, as if the building itself speaks. Ethan said, "I set the test because the system skipped the exam." The hum deepens. Marcus hears his heart climb and then level. He steps to the desk and sees a red light under a ledger. A drive waits where files used to wait. He takes it. The ledger is empty but for one name. His own complaint number sits alone. How long has his past been the tool that shaped each door they open tonight? They play the drive in the car while rain beads. The narrator hears Ethan's voice steady and cold. Ethan said, "This is a ledger of refusals and the donors who bought them." Names slide past with dates, each matched to a quiet death. Ethan said, "They took choice. I took time." He never raises his tone. He believes the math. Priya said, "You made yourself judge." He answers on the recording as if hearing her. Ethan said, "I held a mirror." Marcus feels anger bend toward a shape that looks like pity and stops it. Ethan lists a fixer, a clinician, a fundraiser, a guard. Then he lists a chief who buried an audit. Marcus looks at the rain until it becomes lines. If mirrors only reflect, who is left to see the hand that moves them in the dark? Morning arrives pale and thin. The narrator watches the city blink into a softer gray. Marcus stands by the river and lets the cold go through him. Priya said, "It was always this." Her voice is worn but steady. He thinks of the call that started it, and the call he made years ago that ended in a click. He knows what the ledger means. He knows who signed the report that never reached a desk. He does not feel clean. He feels awake. Marcus said, "We stopped chasing the notes. We dragged the song into open air." Priya nods once. Seagulls cut the wind and leave nothing but sound. He pockets the drive. He leaves the token on the rail. The water takes it and makes no promise. Are they ready to take a truth that will not wash off and walk it into the next door? The warehouse hums like a held breath. Footsteps echo in slow pairs, then stop. The narrator hears wires sing with power somewhere above. Priya said, "Cameras on the catwalk." Marcus feels sweat cold under the collar. He counts 6 lights and 1 shadow that does not move. Ethan said from a speaker, "Det 3 equals truth spoken loud." The boards underfoot creak a warning. Air smells of rust and bleach hiding under metal dust. Marcus said, "We end this on record." Priya said, "We end this alive." A door bangs shut at the far end like a starter pistol that did not fire. The lights dim, then hold like a held blink. The speaker clicks. Ethan said, "Step to the tape." The floor shows a thin chalk circle. The moment pauses in place, the whole room leaning toward the next sound that will break the air. They stand on the edge of the chalk and face a camera on a tripod. The narrator feels each word sharpen. Marcus said, "You promised voice restored. Say it here." Ethan steps from the shadows on the catwalk, calm and sure. Ethan said, "They gambled with breath. I balanced the book." Priya said, "You made graves to write a headline." He shakes his head once. Ethan said, "I made proof." His tone is clipped and almost kind. Marcus hears the hurt under the iron. He said, "You want a confession from a fixer. You want a judge to flinch on air. You want us to be the ink. The rafters ping as heat shifts." Ethan said, "You already are." A door opens above. A bound man stumbles into the light. What breaks first when the truth is forced to speak while the camera waits? The fixer stares at the lens and trembles. The narrator hears the rope rasp against the rail. Marcus says his name, and the man flinches. Priya said, "Tell it, and live." The man looks at Ethan and finds no mercy there, only still ice. He starts to speak. Words fall heavy and plain. He names donors. He names a closed-door vote. He names a chief who buried an audit. The room listens like a church. Then a cable above snaps and whips down near Priya's shoulder. She jerks back, pain flashing and gone. Marcus grabs her arm and steadies her. The fixer sobs once and goes on. Ethan does not move. Silence expands between beats, and the cost fills it. When truth lands this hard, what piece of each person does it take as its price? The room tips toward choice. The narrator marks each breath. Marcus climbs the stairs slow, hands open. Priya covers the floor and sights the exits. Ethan watches him come with eyes that do not blink. Marcus said, "End it clean. Put the knife down you made out of math." Ethan breathes once. Ethan said, "Math cannot grieve." "I can." Rain starts on the roof with a far, soft roar. Light flickers, then steadies like a will found again. Marcus steps inside, arms reach, and lowers his voice. He said, "You brought proof. Let it live past you." Ethan looks at the fixer who will not meet his eyes. The camera light burns steady. Ethan said, Then take the ledger and carry it further than I could. He opens his hands and the remote falls. Is surrender a verdict or only the door to what comes after? After the sirens, the room empties into a quiet that hums. The narrator stands with Marcus beside the tripod. Priya's sleeve is torn and dark at the edge, but her eyes are clear. The fixer signs a statement with a shaking hand. Officers lead him past the chalk circle that meant to trap, and instead framed the truth. Ethan sits on the step and looks at nothing. Marcus said, "This is not victory." Priya said, "It is air." Rain slows to a whisper. Somewhere a gull cries like a hinge. Marcus pockets the drive and the ledger and feels their weight settle as a new kind of debt. He looks at the chalk and sees it as a ring unbroken. He wants it to mean repair. He lets it mean work. What begins when the noise fades, and the truth still needs a place to stand. The warehouse goes quiet like a stage after the last note. Rain becomes a soft thread on the roof, then thins to mist. The narrator watches dust settle in slow spirals where the chalk ring fades. Marcus breathes in the cold and feels it smooth the edges of heat. Priya said, "We're clear." Her voice is low, careful with the air. Officers move like shadows, packing away lights. The fixer signs the final page and stares at nothing. Ethan sits with wrists bound, gaze hollow, storm gone from his eyes. Marcus traces the chalk with his boot and finds a nick where wood once bit. He remembers every click of the timer. He hears every word that cannot be taken back. He looks at Priya's torn sleeve and at his own shaking hand. The night has ended. What did it take with it that no one can return? Back at the river, the city wakes in pale bands of light. The narrator stands with Marcus as gulls draw slow arcs. He closes his eyes and lets quiet carry him to a waiting room from years ago. He hears a heater click and a clock cough. He sees a token on his palm, useless and shining. Priya said, "You did not cause those doors to close." The words land like a blanket and do not warm. He breathes, and memories flick in short cuts. A phone ringing out, a nurse shaking her head, a file stamped and shelved. He feels relief trying to find a seat next to guilt, both refusing to move. He opens his eyes to the water. Priya said, "We told the truth." The current takes a strip of leaf and spins it once before letting go. Life will go on. It will not go on the same. At the precinct, time slows into a hush of vents and muffled phones. The narrator watches Priya rewrap her sleeve while Marcus signs evidence logs. Noah waits in a chair by the door, smaller than the uniform he borrowed. He stands and cannot hold Marcus' gaze. Noah said, "I thought it would stop if I obeyed." The room holds the words and sets them down gently. Marcus said, "It stops when we stop hiding it." Silence adds its own weight and does not crush. Priya nods once to Noah, and he nods back, apology forming without shape. The wall clock ticks like a kinder metronome. Marcus remembers the unit door slamming and chooses not to carry that sound forward. He lifts a pen, and then the pen lifts him. Forgiveness arrives in work clothes, not armor. Can they close one wound without forgetting why it formed? Evening brings a soft amber to the old training room. The narrator lets the past speak from a taped index card on the wall, a note from Detective Alan Mercer that never came down. Alan's scrawl reads, "Hold the line, count the breaths, carry the file." Marcus hears his first months in the echo of that dry ink. He hears a laugh that made the long nights shorter. Priya said, "He would have liked how you climbed those stairs. The air smells of dust and coffee long gone." Marcus said, "He taught me that clean is not easy." The fluorescent hum dips and steadies like a memory finding its place. He touches the card and lets his hand fall. A smile climbs and stops halfway, enough to mean it. What would Alan say now, seeing the ledger ready to meet daylight? Night folds over city glass and leaves a quiet shine. The narrator walks with Marcus into the records office, where a clerk waits with tired eyes. The ledger and drive sit on the counter like two stones that sink whatever holds them. Marcus said, "Log, copy, release when the warrant hits." The clerk nods and begins. Priya stands behind him, steady as a handrail. He signs, and the pen scratches like rain on tin. A breath goes in and does not snag. He turns, looks at the bulletin board, where the broken circle sits redrawn. Whole now, simple and unlit. Priya said, "Ready?" He answers without looking away. Marcus said, "Yes." The door closes on the soft tick of a clock. The path forward is not clean. It is clear. Will clarity be enough to hold when the lights rise in Act 7? Morning stillness holds the precinct like a bowl of quiet. The narrator hears a distant kettle and the small click of a thermostat. Marcus stands by the window where cloud light flattens the city into gray paper. Priya said, "Court moves fast when cameras watch." He nods, and the motion feels like a tide that forgot to rush. He thinks of Ethan on the step, the fixer with his pen, Noah in the chair. He thinks of a waiting room and a phone that never picked up. Loss is present, not loud. He sets his badge on the desk, then picks it up again. He is not done carrying. Priya said, "We did the work." He breathes once, deep and even. The broken circle on the board looks simple as a moon. What remains is not triumph. It is room to keep going. Was it worth it? They walk the river path where the token once slipped from his fingers. The narrator matches each step to a slow drumbeat of traffic on a bridge. Marcus deletes the anonymous voicemails from the case and watches the screen go clean. Priya said, "Keep one." He shakes his head and keeps none. A gull drifts low and rises. He drops a copy of the complaint into a mailbox for the public file and hears it land. Acceptance moves like that. A fall and then a new route. He feels lighter, not empty. Priya said, "Lunch?" He nods and almost smiles. The wind turns and brings the smell of rain mixed with engine heat. They turn toward the street. Somewhere behind them, water closes over a ripple that will not need to be named. In the squad room, a small speaker plays a recovered message Ethan recorded before the warehouse. The narrator lets the voice come as if from another floor. Ethan said, "Carry it further than I could." The words are simple and heavy. Marcus listens without anger, without agreement, only with understanding that hurts and heals. Priya said, "That's the echo that remains." He saves the transcript, not the file. He pins a single strip of paper to the board under the circle. It reads, "No more debts." The room breathes with events and the old clock. He thinks of Alan's card and of quiet acts done without witness. He turns the speaker off. The silence that follows says more and demands less. Truth is a road, not a trophy. Days stack. The narrator watches faces change at the courthouse steps as hearings begin. Reporters tire and rotate. Families speak and go home lighter, or not at all. Marcus walks the perimeter and takes statements that no longer bleed. Priya said, "Thank you," to a mother who needed only a listener. The city adjusts its rhythm by inches. Sirens still run. Coffee still cools on desks. The map on the wall grows cleaner where pins once crowded. Change is not loud. It is steady. The sun finds steel and warms it. The wind moves flags and then rests. The world goes on. The world is not the same. Evening returns to the river where the first vow once cracked. The narrator stands with Marcus as lights bloom along the bridge. He opens his notebook and writes one line, then closes it. Priya said, "What now?" He looks at the water and does not need to answer. He drops nothing, keeps nothing, only breathes. The wind is calm. The city hum is low and kind. He touches the rail and lets silence do the talking. He turns away with a steady step that is not heavy. The chalk ring in his mind stays whole. Truth must never be owned.